Hey, great to have you here. So today I'll be talking about Season 2 of The Last of Us, giving my overall review for it. So I'll briefly be talking about the story progression of the season, giving my thoughts on the main characters, throwing out some pros and cons, and then sharing an overall season rating. So we began things in Season 2 with exploring the emotional development of Ellie and Dina's relationship, as well as Ellie's rift with Joel after the final events from Season 1. We also got introduced to Abby's crew, and she's this other girl who wants to kill Joel for having killed her father. We then jump right into the action of the second game with the tragedy of Joel's death via Abby, but they also add on this Jackson-infected invasion. We get a small time jump to Ellie recovering and pushing for the town to avenge Joel. Jackson doesn't support her wishes though, so she heads out alongside just Dina. We're then introduced to this two-faction conflict between WLF and the Seraphites, seeing the origins of WLF with Isaac. Ellie and Dina are then forced to evade WLF soldiers and the infected. Ellie winds up getting bit and confesses her immunity to Dina, to which Dina returns with a confession of her pregnancy from Jesse. Eventually Jesse catches up with them and saves them, but the Seraphites wind up attacking them, leading to Ellie separating from Jesse and Dina. Ellie stumbles across a member of Abby's team named Nora, and she winds up torturing her as we're introduced to Spores, this airborne version of the infection that we had in the games. We then get an entire episode of Joel and Ellie flashbacks, some happy and some providing conflict. And then in the final episode, we have Ellie going after Abby, but instead killing Owen and Mel, this other pregnant woman, with one bullet. Tommy, Dina, Ellie, and Jesse then all rest for the night until Abby shows up and kills Jesse. We then head back in time to see Abby's side of the story, which is where Season 3 will pick up. Overall, the plot mostly stuck to the game, but was messy and rushed in moments. They made some changes, most of which I wasn't a fan of, outside of the Joel childhood scene with his father in Episode 6. It continues to feel like the intent here was just to shock the audience and hammer us in the head with certain messages, instead of telling a compelling story that I'm interested in engaging with. Before jumping into my thoughts on the characters, if you enjoy talking about this kind of stuff, subscribing to the channel would be greatly appreciated as it really helps. Now quickly talking about some of the characters, Joel was great in the moments we did get of him. You could really tell why his character inclusion made Season 1 so successful. Ellie in this season, I was a little bit more conflicted on. I don't believe this version of Ellie is believable as the mature killer type that I expected. It seems like we're still getting a Season 1 version of Ellie, which she does great in that role, but outside of flashbacks, that wasn't their intent for her character for most of the season. Dina I thought did really well as Ellie's partner in the season, and at times, she even seemed like the lead. Tommy, Joel's brother, was used pretty sparingly, but was effective when he was on screen. Abby I didn't find totally believable in the comparison to the brute force that she was in the game, but we'll be better able to judge her character when we see more of her in Season 3. Other minor roles were alright, nothing overly to call out positively or negatively. I will say the addition of Gail, the Jacksontown therapist, I didn't really care for. I like Catherine O'Hara, but I feel like this role was only included to tell us things instead of showing us. For some quick pros and cons, starting with the pros, the first one being the set design was incredibly well done. When done practically, the environments were both beautiful and captivating. The scene with Ellie hunting down Nora in the basement spore zone particularly comes to mind. Number 2, as expected, the flashback scenes with Joel were great to watch, specifically the museum scene, although I wasn't a big fan of cramming them all into one episode, and towards the back half of that episode, episode 6, we do get a bit force-fed Joel's evil side with the Eugene moment. And then third pro for the season, Dina and Jesse as new additions to the season felt organically included, and their actors were solid value adds to the story. For some quick cons, starting with number 1, I mentioned this already, but Ellie just didn't work for me. Her character took me out of the story in some scenes with the way she was portrayed, and I'm hoping that's something they can improve upon in future seasons. Her character development also seemed a bit all over the place compared to the game. In the game to where we are in the story, she's a constant killing machine, whereas here she'll be super serious in one moment, and then goofy or overly emotional in the next. In comparison to the game, it gets a little bit harder to do in the show, but I don't think her kill count here really screams a revenge story here either. And then number 2 for cons, plot points here frequently felt forced throughout the season. Many times logic would get thrown out the window, or we would get heavy plot armor in order to reach this destination we were driving towards. And I'm not too sure 7 episodes was the right choice here. Why span part 2 of the story across 3 seasons, but also shorten the seasons? Is it a budget or timing problem? Not entirely sure there. And then for a third con, building on my last point, we get introduced to Abby and then completely abandon her character until the very end of the season. I think they should have taken the game's approach and had her story interwoven alongside Ellie's instead of giving each their own season. Maybe separating them makes the plot easier to digest, but I think if we're supposed to be comparing these two journeys, seeing them side by side may work better. So now for an overall rating for Season 2 of The Last of Us, I'm torn between a 3 and a 4. To me, it's a below average season of television that I don't plan to rewatch. And for transparency here, when it comes to the games, I was a bigger fan of Part 1 compared to Part 2. Although I have seen most Part 2 fans not liking this season either. In the end, I'll pick the more positive side of my choices and say 4 out of 10 for Last of Us Season 2. The plot and character development don't particularly work for me, but I can frequently see that this is a well-produced and high-budget project. It just isn't my type of story. But those are just my thoughts. What are yours? What parts did you like or dislike about Season 2, and how would you rate it? If you played the second game, did you like it? Sound off on all things The Last of Us in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to talk to you again soon.